So family, we're gonna listen to some education from Dr. Claud. So I hope y'all having a wonderful day. And thank you all for your support, your likes, and your shares. Let's get right into this education.
Has in fact locked blacks into their place. It did in fact do that. But what's going to happen now is that automation and new technology is going to wipe that place out. We anticipate there are somewhere between about 26 million people in this nation becoming obsolete by the year 2013, and out of that, the greater portion is going to be blacks. So we got to figure out how do we not get wiped out by automation. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
Now, if we're going to become competitive, we must go back to the point you just made. The key to black survivalship at this point in time is what I call political economics, which means we got to figure out how we can start practicing group economics and group politics and do it very successfully and effectively quickly. And that means all the way down the line. That means going into the retail industry, all the way down to the resource. We got to become producers instead of consumers. We got to not only have retail outlets, but we must have manufacturers, producers, wholesalers, warehouses, distributors. Underneath every business that we have, we got to do everything humanly possible to hold our capital in our disposable capital in our communities. We must make it bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves. Currently, as you know, it doesn't bounce one time. We must learn how to formate capital. Now, how do we formate capital? There are a lot of ways we can do it. The first way is what I indicated to you on the last show, is try to keep that 95% of disposable income that's currently going into the white community, keep it in our communities. And since the whites are boycotting our communities, and we are boycotting our own communities, we can never recapture it that way unless we stop it. The second thing we must do is to try to figure out other creative ways of getting capital, i.e., we have what we call a property confiscation program in this country. Most of that money in that program is coming out of activities, illegal activities that blacks were caught in. And last time I checked, at the federal level, we have approximately $700 million, okay? Now, typically what happens to that money and those properties is that it's given through the good old boy network to their friends and passed on and used for other purposes. Now, that money and that collateral belongs to no one. Now, what we should start doing in this country as a black nation, start insisting that money comes back to the black community in a liquefied form.
That is an interesting assertion. And one of the points that can be made is in everything you're saying and what you point to in this book as solution-oriented.
That's right.
For the black political and economic situation in America is to devise a national strategy. All of this you're talking about comes under the guise of formulating a national strategy for economic and self-empowerment.
That's right. And why this is so critically important, Daryl, is because if we buy into the current economic philosophies of the mainstream society, we are through. Because they're going to continue to pump new technology into the market, and we're going to be the last hired and the first fired, and we're going to continue to become obsolete increasingly, where our unemployment will continue to escalate and our displacement will continue to escalate. We must come up with a new system that will take us out of that philosophy and build an alternative social economic system for ourselves that will survive. And it must be politically, economically based. Okay?
Does that mean we continue to go begging to the current tax system, the current federal bureaucracy? How can we do it outside that web?
Well, we're gonna have to get outside of the web because that's the way they have a schedule presently. You hear all this talk, for instance, about reducing the size of government, anti-government. What they really want to do is reduce the size of government because they know that about 68 to 70% of the black folk that got an education are employed in some level of government, either the city level, county level, state level, or federal level. So you start talking about downsizing government, what you're really talking about is disemploying black folk. But you never hear them say, first of all, if we're going to downsize government, why don't we commit a study that would determine the impact on black folk when we do this, since a disproportionate number of black folk are using those kinds of opportunities for income. Secondly, what are we going to do when we in fact displace those black folk? What are we going to do with those monies that we save from downsizing government? When we kick blacks off the second level out of welfare, what happens to the money we save for welfare? Why don't you put that money at the top level from downsizing government and downsizing welfare? Why don't you put that money into an alternative economic development system for black folk to do what you have never done for them, to assist them in developing a business structure in this country? But you never hear that as a solution.
And I guess you never hear it because in this day and time especially, there seems to be a mood and a philosophy being transmitted that the government has given, in effect, everything black people have by way of positive development and achievement in this country, everything that black people have that's positive has come from government action. The current administration would certainly seem to want that to be the case.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they've been trying to perpetuate that myth for years now. As a matter of fact, ironic, I think it's funny that first of all, we must realize that black folk have only been out of semi-slavery now for about 30 years. Only 30 years. Now, when they first came out in the mid-1960s, they came into what we call the Great Society programs that were permitted to exist for about 3.5 years. Now, even though those programs were not specifically designed and focused on blacks were supposed to somehow to have gotten involved in those programs and achieved wealth, and in 3.5 years, were supposed to have corrected 350 years of subordination, exclusion, and subjugation.
Mm-hmm. It's all supposed to have worked out in 30 years.
You know, and yet, and you look at that in those 3.5 years, and look how blacks got into that dilemma. Blacks got into that predicament because the entire society was working against them. All levels of government was putting blacks, enslaving blacks, segregating and Jim Crowing blacks. All institutions, churches, schools were working against blacks. All aspects of the legal system, the court system, was working against black folk. And all the major corporations were using the billions of dollars to make sure that black folk were exploited and subjugated. Now, we never had that kind of commitment during the Great Society program, not from corporations, from businesses, from universities, from churches, or from government to help blacks. And yet somebody said, well, you know, you're supposed to have come out in that 3.5 years. So I think it's ludicrous. And in some ways, it borders on being a little bit insulted.
One of the things we have to understand is when we start talking about solutions, as you've outlined them in the book, Black Labor, White Wealth, certain notions that you propose are going to be unpopular, not only with mainstream America, whites in particular, whites who control economic systems and subsystems, but blacks who think that they, by virtue of their intellect, acumen, and their own financial wherewithal, have made it in the society. Not to discredit those who have worked hard and achieved something, but it would sound to some people like so much government handout, so much corporate charity. One of the things that I want to point out is that you enumerate that among the very many solutions that are available might be the very controversial reparations route. What's your slant on the reparations, the giving of money to African Americans in this generation by the government whose forebears were enslaved in America?
I am 100% supportive of that, Daryl, whether you call it reparations or restitutions. And not because it's a handout or a give out, it's the fact that it's something that's owed black folk. But even more importantly, it is what you call equality. It's the equality of restitution. You gave restitution to all indentured white servants that came to this country. They were contracted with, that says after 7 years, they will receive compensation, they will receive animals, they will receive tools, they will receive weapons, and they will receive land. Now, they were compensated when they were put into slavery. Indians also have been compensated now for the last 260 years with land, with free education, no taxes, free medical care, free food, and so on. The Jews have been picked up over $52 billion from the German government for restitutions. The Japanese, for their internment for 4 years during World War II, they picked up $22,000 each. And now we got some of the veterans of World War II now filing suit against the Japanese government for compensation for imprisonment during the war. Now, by the same token, black folk have been done in every possible political, economic, emotional, psychological, and financial fashion, and no one has issued an apology or a penny to them yet. No, I think blacks are entitled to it. Now, on the other hand, I don't think blacks will ever get it, because there's no incentive and there's no interest in the white community giving it to them. But I still think they need to ask for it and demand it. And moreover, you talk about affirmative action and quotas. What we have to understand in this society is that's how white society got its wealth and power. It got its wealth and power through an affirmative action program, through set-asides and through quotas that were initiated and maintained by this government.
And this government, however, and many people within this government structure extol the virtues of individual right and liberty.
But it's a new time and a new age from when he put that in. We will get reparations, family. God is already showing us that his word stands. He said heaven and earth will pass away before one word I said go voided. And he has judgment on all these nations that had black people enslaved and black Americans. So family, like the video, share it. Love y'all. Bye.